Hello, wild people. Welcome back to AK Wild One. I'm back from through hiking the Colorado Trail, and during my long days on the hike, I came up with some new tips and revised some of my past tips for older hikers. Thank you for tuning in. First off, I missed y'all. Thank you to my friends who followed along on our Colorado Trail adventures and sent me positive messages along the way on my AK Wild One Facebook page or my AK Wild One YouTube channel. These comments help a lot, so thank you again. In the weeks to come, I'll be working on my Colorado Trail documentary, and I'm excited to tell you about the stories that I gathered from this wonderful trail and this wonderful adventure. So as I mentioned, while I was hiking the CT, I realized I needed to update and revise my tips for older hikers. My tips videos always seem to be among the most popular episodes. So here goes. Tip number 1, when training for a long distance hike, make sure you train on uneven ground. Training on flat ground for a long distance hike, whether it's the Pacific Crest Trail, the Continental Divide Trail, the Appalachian Trail, or the Colorado Trail, or something similar, is kind of like an opera singer practicing the song Bingo in preparation for a performance. Or it's like preparing for a fishing trip by playing video games. Training on flat ground for a long distance hike has only marginal value. I'm lucky that my training mountain is very steep, rocky, and unstable. Hiking up and down my training mountain helped prime my feet to rocky, steep terrain before I hit the PCT and the Colorado Trail, both of which can be challenging and cause you to stumble. Both Flash and I managed to complete the Colorado Trail this past summer without falling once. Training on uneven ground also helps your ankles develop the mobility they need on the trail and hone the type of footwork you'll need to avoid injuries on the trail. So, train on uneven ground and steep trails before you head out on your long distance hike. Tip number 2. When training, try to find a sustainable pace that you can maintain over a long distance. You'll know you're in pretty good shape when you can hike uphill for 60 to 90 minutes with a 20 to 25 pound pack. In my mind, it doesn't matter how slow I go, but can I just keep going without resting or getting winded? Can I find through hiker overdrive? Of course, maintaining a consistent hiking pace at higher elevations is not always possible, but I consider myself in pretty okay shape when I can walk up a 600-foot elevation gain over 2 miles without stopping. Tip number 3, hike smarter, not harder. When we started the Colorado Trail, the temperature in Denver was nearly 100 degrees by mid-afternoon. My trail comrade Linus and I knew that afternoon heat was going to be the enemy, so we adapted. We started getting up at 3:30 a.m. and hitting the trail by 4 a.m. and adopted the mantra 10 by 10 or 10 miles by 10 a.m. We settled for 15-mile days early on because the heat was so intense and we didn't want to burn ourselves out, literally. Later, we encountered afternoon thunder and lightning storms, so we planned our day to avoid high ridges in the later afternoons. We kept getting up early and set up camp by 4 p.m., just before the storms hit. These strategies were part of hiking smarter, not harder. And they served us well. They helped us maintain our sunny dispositions and helped us avoid burnout on the trail. Tip number 4, this is my golden oldie, obsess over your footwear. And I mention this in nearly all my videos. For some reason this year my feet seemed comfortable in a mid-weight hiking boot. When I put on my trail runners, Hoka Speed Goats, My feet and ankles ached after a hike, even though I've gone through 8 pair in the last 2 years. The trail runners just didn't seem to provide the same comfort as before. So I switched to my mid-weight hiking boots and my feet never ached the whole trip, while my 2 companions had foot and knee problems hiking in trail runners. The bottom line is, before heading out on a long-distance hike, try to take a series of 10-mile hikes with a 20 to 25-pound backpack across uneven ground, uphill, and gauge how your feet feel in your choice of footwear. If your feet ache at the end of such a hike, you should reconsider the type of shoe or boot you plan to wear on your through hike. Don't go with fad footwear. Approach your choice of shoe or boot objectively and scientifically. Tip number 5, use trekking poles. As an older hiker, I use trekking poles, and 99% of the through hikers I've encountered use them along their hikes. However, it's important to use them to supplement, not supplant, your balance. They shouldn't become crutches. Sometimes I felt like hiking without my trekking poles just to make sure I maintain good balance. Also, out of 3,500 miles of backpacking, I've broken only 1 trekking pole, and it was due to operator error. I think you're more likely to break a trekking pole while you're crossing rocky stretches such as rock slides, when you're more likely to accidentally jam your pole in between rocks and then snap them. I also don't tighten my pole length fasteners all the way down, so there's a little bit of slide in case I wind up exerting too much pressure on them when stumbling. I want my pole to slide an inch or 2 rather than snap. I have to adjust the poles just right to get this shock absorber effect. Not too tight, but certainly not too loose. You want it to move only an inch or so if you stumble and put a lot of weight on it. This will help prevent pole breaks. Before I go on to my last 5 tips, can I take a moment to ask you a favor? If you find this video interesting, please take a moment to subscribe. We're closing in on 10,000 subscribers, which is a big deal. Also, please comment, share, and like this video. It helps inspire the YouTube algorithm gods to push this video farther out into the YouTube universe. Thank you. Tip number 6, take high elevation gains seriously. Most of the Colorado Trail is above 10,000 feet, and you spend a lot of miles walking and camping above 12,000 feet. It took me about a week to fully acclimate to the higher elevations, and I noticed I was a bit sluggish and nauseous early on when we reached 12,000 feet. I also met some younger hikers who reacted the same way to the higher elevations. Now, I don't want to get out of my depth, so I'll never offer medical advice, but if you're hiking higher elevations, make sure you're physically healthy and fit, maintain hydration, avoid alcohol, and ease into the higher elevations slowly. If you have any concerns about hiking at higher elevations prior to hitting the trail, talk with your doctor. The bottom line is, if you haven't hiked in higher elevations, let's say 8,000 feet and above, then you have to develop a strategy for how you're going to deal with it. Tip number 7, when you're planning a through hike, don't overplan and overestimate how many miles you'll do each day. Don't get locked into a timeline on how you expect your hike to play out. I've seen too many hikers set unrealistic expectations and then grow frustrated and quit when they don't meet those expectations. Also, you might encounter snow, lightning, fires, bridge washouts, high rivers that will force you to adapt your plans. Be flexible. So for example, on the Colorado Trail, we had to adapt to the heat and to the afternoon lightning storms, and we never obsessed about meeting a specific quota of daily miles. Also, when we started climbing some 12,000-foot passes, we needed to slow down a bit. Most days we hiked between 15 and 20 miles a day, and we took time to enjoy the trail and the trail towns along the way. Tip number 8, use an application like Far Out to help plan your day. When considering how many miles you'd like to do in a day, consider your physical shape, trail conditions, elevation gain, amount of trail higher than 9,000 feet, or lower depending on your physiology and level of physical fitness. Also consider the temperature, water sources, exposure, etc. Did you know you can select a mile range on Far Out and it will tell you how many feet you'll ascend and descend during that section and the average grade? This is very helpful for me when I plan my day out. For me, a very tough day is about 20 miles and a 5,000 foot of elevation gain. I can usually handle an average around 3,500 feet of elevation gain a day on my through hikes. Considering total miles is important, but don't forget to consider those other factors that I've mentioned, like elevation gain, trail conditions, water sources, exposure, etc. Tip number 9, here's one smaller thing I learned. I never broke a pair of glasses until this trip. At night, I always stored my glasses in a pocket on the side door by the floor of my tent. But this year, I rolled on my glasses and broke them. I found a better place in my tent. Hang them from the loop in the mosquito netting zipper at the top. They'll be easy to find when you get up in the morning and you won't break them. And finally, tip number 10, for us older backpackers, always pee before bedtime. Make this a ritual. At least you'll get some REM sleep. I'm not quite ready for the pee bottle, but peeing before I turn in at night gets me through the night. Well, wild people, thank you for tuning in. Feel free to leave a comment about your favorite tip for older hikers. And if this channel has an essential purpose, it's to motivate, encourage, and inspire older folks to pursue a more active outdoor lifestyle. And so, until we meet again, live wildly, my friends.